Live from WRUE in Tennessee, it's the Scribbling Woman.
Hi, I'm Nancy Rue. I am a scribbling woman, and so are you. And that's why we're having this conversation. Here, we talk about the writerly life that is unique to you, no matter your age, your season, or your writing career as it is now, even if you don't think you have one yet. We are all scribblies, so let's chat. Today, I'm going to start with a little bit of backstory. And trust me, this is not shameless self promotion. Okay, just a little background. All right. When I was 29 years old, I was a wife and the mother of a very active little toddler, and I was teaching public high school English full time. It just felt like something wasn't right. There was a piece missing. And that's when my writerly dream began. Well, I couldn't just quit teaching and go for it. It's really not realistic for anyone. So I started with baby steps, but oh, I had my dreams. I dreamed that someday I would write full time, that I would sell a bajillion books, reach so many teenagers and tweens and contemporary women, and that I would have a beautiful studio, hopefully looking over some water. And that was my dream. So I began with a little desk in the corner of our bedroom, and I would pop up my 18-month-old in the middle of the queen size bed with a can of buttons. And then I started to write. And that's where I wrote the first short story of mine that was published. Now, in the meantime, I don't know how many buttons my child consumed, but at 45, she loves buttons to this day. But from there, for the next 20 years, the dream slowly and gradually unfolded. And I did traditionally publish 125 books. I wrote hundreds of articles and short stories. I spoke to thousands of people, moms and daughters. I taught workshops. I mentored people. And I did finally get that studio overlooking a lake here in Lebanon, Tennessee. It was the golden era. I was one of 2% of the population of writers who was actually making a living at what I was called to do. Yeah, it was a golden era. And then a shift began to occur. Now, for me, that was around 2009, and there was a perfect storm that took shape on my horizon. First, there was the recession, which meant that mom and pop bookstores were closing right and left. Advances were shriveling. A lot of the Christian publishing houses for which I was writing were absorbed by larger secular houses, and the algorithms began to change. My agent passed away. Suddenly, it seemed as if everything had changed, everything had shifted. And by 2017, when my last book was traditionally published, I couldn't give it away. Why am I telling you all of this? Because recently I was right where every writer finds herself at some point, when the dreams are stalled and you don't know whether to pivot or just fold. And that's when we start asking ourselves the question, what is the point in all of these dreams when you don't know whether you're going to be disappointed? And inevitably, in some way, you are. So before any of us just completely throw in the towel, let me tell you a little bit more of that story. I, like you, had choices, and I saw that I actually had three. The first one is that I could have just let go of the dreams and stopped writing. And that would be like saying, I think I won't have brown eyes anymore. I mean, can you even imagine yourself not writing? That's why you're here, right? Or secondly, I could blame the entire industry and redo my podcast to title it Everything We Hate About Traditional Publishing, which would have been ridiculous because it's not all bad. Good work is still being published. Recently, we've seen Ashley Weaver, India Holton, Joanna Davidson Politano. It's just that not everything that is good is being published. And that's why writers like Diana Sharples, Judith Forgeston, Andrea Chapman, Barbara Haley have all elected to go with independent publishing, which led me to the third option, and that's the one that I've decided to take. I've decided to self-publish. Now, back in the day, in that golden era I was just talking about, self-publishing was called vanity publishing, and you paid buku bucks for somebody to publish your book that, quite frankly, wasn't good enough to be published by traditional publishing. That is simply not the case anymore. Now, self-publishing is a viable choice for writers who write fabulous fiction and nonfiction and have a deep desire to get their work out there in the hands of people who are hungry for it. So I've gathered a stellar team around me because it's not something I can do by myself. Why would I feel like a failure? It feels like a new adventure. I'm going someplace I've never been before. So what does it mean then to adjust our dreams without feeling like we're settling, which is a topic that we're going to discuss on its own in a future episode. But I think for now, let's talk about the 4 necessary steps that are involved when your dream stalls and you don't quite know what to do. First of all, remember, make no excuses. This is a whining-free zone. Okay, take a little time to grieve the loss. I certainly did. Maybe throw a little pity party for yourself, invite some of your fellow scribblies over, maybe throw some stuffed animals across the room, maybe throw a lot of stuffed animals across the room. But put a statute of limitations on wallowing. You just don't have the time to stay there for very long. And then secondly, look at what's still possible. For example, if every agent is saying you're too white and straight and they want diversity, well, you can't change yourself, but you can look at how said diversity might figure into your story. Or if your free time to write is now limited by the necessity of suddenly having to get a job, can you look for employment that doesn't completely wear you out so that at the end of the day, you still have energy for your own creative pursuits? Or what if you've had to use most of the money that you saved up for a week-long research trip to put a new engine in your Volkswagen? Can you do a day trip instead? You don't have to chuck your entire dream just because a piece of it falls off. And I think the second step is to accept what isn't possible with grace and with dignity. No one has the energy to both pivot and fill your social media posts with how ignorant and stupid editors are. We're creators, not destroyers. So raking that contest judge over the coals every chance you get does not nurture the creativity that you need for your next step. The more worked up we get venting, the more bitter we become. And that is inevitably going to come out in our writing. Is really that what we want to bring to the world? And the fourth step is to add a different texture to make this a new dream. Now, it might have similarities to the old one. It probably will. But if you can see this as an opportunity to think outside the box, take a risk, add some depth and some richness. So if editors at writers' conferences are telling you that fantasy just isn't selling, they're just not buying any more fantasy, and that's your sweet spot, can you think of a new genre? Because that's how romantasy came into being. What about fairy detectives? What about futuristic wizards? What about fantasy suspense? If you always wanted to make a living writing full time, and that's just not likely to happen, can you construct a writing career that involves things like writing articles and stories for online venues that pay, some ghost writing, maybe some editing, still leaving time for you to work on that novel that is so very much a part of your dream? If you were ill for 5 years and there was a publisher that was really interested in your project, but you weren't able to work on it, now you are, and the editors have changed hands and they're really not interested in that project anymore, well, maybe create a new trend of your own. See how that project might fit what's going on, or create something completely unique. As we bring our first season of the Scribbling Woman to a close, this season of dreaming your writerly life that's unique to you, and before we enter the next season, let's circle back to what we talked about in episode 2. Why not, when the dream stalls, go back to your favorite dreaming space? Whether it's the car pickup line when you're getting your kids, or it is that little cafe where the barista knows your name and what you want to drink. And then why not pull out a sketchbook or a blank notebook and begin to fill it with new aspects of your dream? Doodle, scribble, and find out what the texture of your new writerly life might include. So rather than think of this as settling for something less than, try reframing it as an opportunity to do something completely new, reimagine, rethink. Now, remember also in episode 2, we talked about the boho, the big old hairy obstacle that likes to hiss at you just when things are going well. It hisses even louder when things are not going well. So just recall these things. You got a one-liner at the ready. Sorry, only hearing new business today. Remind yourself that that voice tells lies. It says things like, see, I told you you'd be disappointed. We're going to do this again. You simply say, why, yes. Yes, I am. And then go for it. Because scribbling women are courageous. We don't let fear of failure limit our possibilities. Actually, there is no failure. There is only new direction. Now, if you want to ponder this some more, you might think about this. Where are you stalled in your dream? Where are things not quite panning out as you envision them? What you going to do about that, scribblies? And then take that and scribble on. If you want to delve into this more deeply with other scribblies, absolutely visit the blog at www.nancyrue.com/blog. And until next time, scribblies, do scribble on.